He bets you are just sitting there dreaming about your perfect property in Spain. There's a little bit of homework to do first, so we're going to take you through the 8 stages of that, if he sticks around for that long. I've lost the guy already. So before you even start the search, think about which part of Spain you want to be in, north or south. If you're from a cold climate like me, it's probably going to be the south, where there's more sunshine throughout the year. Now, then narrow it down to which province, which municipality, and which town or village you want to be in. Then it makes your search a little bit easier in starting to look for the perfect property. Now, stage 1, there's the bells, before you come to Spain, think about engaging a lawyer and organising your NIE number. I'm going to come back when the bells are finished. Okay, so NIE number, the bells have quietened down. Número identificación de extranjero, so identification number of foreigners, it means. Now, you need this to do literally anything and everything in Spain. And it's always good to have it on you, because if you get stopped by the police, which I have once or twice, and you have to show it. The lawyer can organise that for you. Now, when you're looking for a lawyer, it's advised that you look on the internet, maybe in your own country's government websites, who can recommend lawyers who speak your language in the country that you're searching in. Now, most lawyers prefer to organise the NIE number if it's tied in with the purchase of a property. So tell them what your intentions are, ask them what the fees will be. It's normally about 1% of the property purchase price now, and ask them exactly what they're going to deliver for that. So it should be that they would organise the NIE, they'll open a bank account, they'll organise the property purchase, maybe take on power of attorney so that they can complete the sale if you're not in the country, and then post-sale administration as well, like changing names of the electricity bill, the EB, the water, and paying your purchase taxes, which need to be paid within 60 days of the completion. Just be careful about taking on a lawyer that's been recommended by your estate agent. If that happens, which I do recommend a particular lawyer, Rafael in Granada, make sure that you search on the internet that it's a recognised registered lawyer, and that there is no link to the estate agency, that she is completely independent, and there's no conflict of interest. Most Spanish buyers tend not to use a lawyer for the purchase of a property. They just go to the notary to complete the sale. But it is highly recommended. 1, they'll be acting as a translator for you, and 2, making the obvious property checks to ensure that everything is in order and legal. It just saves you a huge headache, even post-sale as well, the things that they can organise, and you can start to enjoy your life in Spain, take away the stresses. Stage 2, fees. So you're looking at about 10% of the total property purchase price to cover the extra fees. Now, this will be the purchase tax, ATP, which is in Andalucia, where I'm based. It would be 7% for non-residents and 8% for residents of Spain. It also includes your land registry and notary fees, each of which are approximately €500 to €600, based on properties that I sell of about 50 to 100,000. On top of that, you've got your lawyer, which I mentioned previously, is about 1% of the total fee. Now, that does round up to about 10%. Every property that I've sold, it tends to be around about that. In addition to that 10%, you'd have mortgage valuation fee if you were getting a mortgage, and then surveyors and lawyers would go on top of, surveyors and architects would go on top of that. The lawyers are included. So, stage 3 now. You find your perfect property and you're ready to sign the contract and reserve it. Now, be careful with reservation fees. You always need to make sure that the owners have committed to sell you the property, not just the agent. Why? That agent may not have exclusivity of the property, and if they haven't and they take 1,000 or whatever it is commission off you, it doesn't stop another agent from selling it or the owner from selling it, so it actually means nothing without something signed by the vendor, the owner of the property. Now, what I normally do is I do skip that bit. I go straight to the official contrato de arras. So I don't tend to say to people, oh, the property might be going to go, if you know, you need to give me something now, otherwise it's going to be gone in a week's time. Because in the area that I work in, you'd be very, very unlucky for that to happen, because the properties, things don't move that quick, okay? So I tend to just get the contrato de arras done, which is deposit contract, officially as soon as possible if somebody is interested in the property. That contract includes the sale price, the deposit, where the deposit is held, so the bank details of where the deposit is held goes on the contract, so there's a record of that. Often, Spanish to Spanish, they would pay the owner directly, and then it would be a handshake and trusting that if things, you know, if that they wouldn't run off with that deposit. I put the deposit in my holding account and it stays there until the sale, and then it's transferred to the owners. Now, if you as the buyer was to pull out of the contract, that deposit would go to the owners of the property. If the owners were to pull out of the contract, that deposit would go back to you. It was your money anyway, so you're still not up. So they need to send the same amount again. So in effect, they pay the double goes back to you, your deposit and double, and that amount repeated. So the agent could hold your contract, the lawyer could hold it. So just make sure that it's in a safe place and that the details are in the contrato de arras. Anything else can go in it, so there can be clauses in, conditions of the purchase, whether there's going to be furniture left, even which furniture is going to be left in the sale, whether the property is to be left empty if it's full of things that have gathered over 100 years. You might want that all cleared out, and that would go in the contract, and the property would be checked before the purchase too. But the main thing is that the paperwork is right. So sometimes if I think there may be problems with the documents, which I'll go over in a minute, which documents they are, then I do put a clause in to say that the contract could be cancelled free of penalty to either party if there was a problem with the paperwork, because often the sellers don't even know there is. So I don't like to hit people with that fee if they've already found out that they're going to have to spend $2,000 in correcting paperwork as well. I hear you. Why would we be advertising a property if the paperwork wasn't all in order? Well, in Spain, unfortunately, a lot of the properties are inherited, and that's been lots of years ago, 50 or 100 years ago, and nobody's checked the paperwork since then. But particularly Spanish sellers don't want to give exclusivity to agents. Therefore, if an agent was to spend a day checking all the paperwork, maybe 6 weeks rectifying all the paperwork, helping the owners rectify it, and then it could be sold through another agent. So that's why the way that I work is I do start to make the checks. I know it's not ideal, but I start to make the checks once there's an interested buyer. Now, really, as well, it's for your lawyer. If you engage a lawyer, it's the lawyer that would make the checks. But I like to be proactive and do that before a lawyer notifies me of any issue. So I'll always order the nota simple, which I'll explain in a minute, as soon as I know that you're interested in the sale, so that we're one step ahead and can start to make those changes. I can start to give the bad news to the sellers that there's a bit of money and time to be spent on it before the sale officially proceeds. Hope that makes some sense to you. Documents. So the three main documents that your lawyer will be checking will be, and that I can check if I start a sale: nota simple, escrituras, which are the deeds, and the cadastral. Now, the nota simple first. Anyone can order a nota simple on any property. I personally go to the land registry and order one, which costs me about €3. But you can get them online as well at registro.es. Now, when you're purchasing a property, that nota simple needs to be current. You can't have the buyer saying, oh, I've got one here, but it's 10 years old. It shows whether there's any debts on the property, hence why it needs to be current. It also tells you that the owner is the owner. Now, as soon as I know you're interested, I go and I order that, so I'm pre-prepared before the lawyer does the checks, and I can go straight to the lawyer and say, here's the nota simple, I'm this is in process. The owners are rectifying the problems. Because I have found out recently, actually with English sellers, that there was a mortgage on the notice in play. It was paid, but it hadn't been cleared off the notice in play. So what I had to do was go to the bank, and then, with the help of the owners, go to the bank. We ordered a cancellation certificate that then had to be taken to the notary, that then had to sign that off and then take it to the land registry to clear it off the notice in play. Another thing, I've also ordered one, and the owners on the escritoras, who were the owners, weren't the owners on the notice in play, because the communication from the notary on the purchase to the land registry after completion hadn't been done. So that's why you need to make sure you've got a really good lawyer to see the process through to the end. It will happen on this sale. It's actually still in process now, but you know, you need to really know that it's happening as just after you've bought the property. Hope that one helps. Now, the cadastral map is an outline of the property showing the borders, and this is what your council tax is based on, because it shows metres square as well, and obviously location, because council tax can vary a lot, as you know, based on that. And the measurements on that should be the same as the measurements on the escritoras, but in the area where I work, 90% of the time they aren't. Now, if the difference is less than 10%, it's not such a big problem. But once it's more than 10%, it is recommended really that you get that changed. So there's two ways of doing that. The owners could start the process and make sure that the two documents match by organising a technical to come out and measure the actual measurements of the property and then change it on both documents, because they're probably both wrong. Or that does take time though. So if you're keen to purchase the property quickly, you could take on that job, but you would ask for a reduction in price, because it costs 1,500, 2,000 euros to make those changes, depending on property size. Again, if you've got buying a luxury, large, expensive property, it's probably going to be quite a substantial amount more than that. So, but your lawyer would advise you, because you need to make sure that it's also physically possible to make all of the changes that need to be made. But negotiations can take place as well, and it can also be written into the contract. So you might be negotiating, and you'll say, right, okay, we want to go ahead with the purchase, but the owners need to rectify this. You pay a deposit, they need to rectify it by X date. So you might sign the contract and say we're going to complete 6 months down the line to give them time to do it. Now, your lawyer will check all of these documents. Also, they'll check with the council to make sure that there's no plans to build a hospital in front of your living room window or something crazy like that, that the borders of the property are secure, that you can't have a road being built through your back garden. So there was a property that I nearly bought in Chiclana there. I'm just actually selling my property there at the minute, but the one that I really loved, but there was about 2 metres of the full length of the garden that in the future could be used to widen the road, and I thought, oh, I don't think I could be doing with that. It was quite a big garden. I probably could have given up the 2 metres, but the hassle of it all, and half your garden being dug up, it would be a nightmare. So your lawyer's going to check everything like that for you. Okay, point 5. I think we're on 5, are we? Notary visit. So on the day of the sale, the compraventa, your lawyer would go to the notary with you, or instead of you, if you've given them power of attorney. Let me just talk about that a second. I'm just going to backtrack. Before you purchase the property, or before your property search even, your first visit to Spain, go to see your lawyer and give them power of attorney. At that point, it's a lot easier. So on the day of the sale, you would go, the sellers of the property would go. Now, in this area, sometimes there are lots of sellers if the property's been inherited. So my sister bought one. It was great value. The property was only 32,000. And there were 17 owners. I had power of attorney, so I had to go to the notary office with the 17 owners. Now, what happens in the notary is that you'll see her assistant, her, the one that I generally work with is her. You'll see the assistant first, and they will prepare all of the documents, make sure that everything's in place. You'll do the bank transfer, to the owners, and then once that's all confirmed, they will then send you into the official notary's office to sign. So everybody will go in there, everybody involved will sign the documents, plus a translator actually, and then the keys will be handed over. So yeah, you will, if you're not with the lawyer, if by any chance you haven't used a lawyer, you would need to take a translator to the notary with you if you don't speak Spanish. And then yeah, you would get the keys and you would go out for a glass of cava and a menú del día. Two other points that I want to make though about the notary visit is that when you are doing making bank transfers, so whether it's for the deposit or for the balance of the payment, you need receipts from the bank. So it's easy to forget the deposit one because you do that in the very early stages. A copy of your bank statement isn't enough. You need an official receipt for that transaction because the notaries are checking for money laundering, so they need to show proof of that. The other thing that you need to know is that if the sellers of the property are non-residents of Spain, you, as the buyer or your lawyer, would need to retain 3% of the property purchase price. Now, the reason for that is the government are ensuring that if somebody leaves the country that they are going to get the taxes. So your seller would be paying their taxes on the difference between what they bought the property for and what they sell it for. So basically the profit made minus any receipts that works that have been done on it, and they would be paying like 21% of that. I think it's 21%, don't quote me on that. I'll write in the comments below if I find out that it's incorrect. They would be paying that tax, so you would need to do that. So there's forms that your lawyer would organise, and the process would be carried out by them, and I think it's up to 2 months after the property those taxes will be paid, and anything that the owner didn't or anything, the difference between what they own, the 3%, you will need to transfer back to the owner of the previous owner of the property. Whoa, hope that makes sense. There was a lot of waffle there. Point number 6, property value. Now, very difficult to value a property in Spain because there's not a street full of houses that are all similar. You can look at what sold 2 months ago, a very similar style property. They're all so different, and some owners, you know, they want to sell really quickly and they'll put a fair price on. All they want is what they've spent on it, or even happy to take a little bit of a loss if they've had the property for years and years. But some are determined to, you know, to get the money back for what they've spent on it as well, and the price can be inflated quite a lot. Now, I do often say to sellers of properties, you know, if it's too much, that I'm not prepared to advertise it. But there's some that I think are a great bargain, some that I think, oh, all right, okay, it's probably a little bit high, but maybe for the right person, it's going to be fine. But you can check that on Idealista. There is a facility where Idealista is a property search site. There is a facility where you can look. It's only a guide though, because it doesn't take into consideration the standard of the property, any refurb that's been done. But you can have a look to see roughly what it might be worth in that area and that type of property. And another thing with value is that in land registry, they will give the property a value. What's really important though is that you bear in mind that it may have been last valued 20 years ago, so that's not reliable either. If you're paying 50,000 for property, you might think these figures I'm talking about are really low, but this is how, you know, the prices of inland Spain. You might be paying 50,000 for it, but on paper it might be worth 20,000. Well, don't just ignore it, because it's just base it on what's on the internet at that time. But remember also that what is on the internet hasn't yet sold, so it might actually go for less than that. Now, your taxes are based on, so your 7% or 8% purchase tax that you're going to pay in Andalucia is based on the higher of the cadastral and the actual purchase price. So if your cadastral value has recently been revised, and it's higher than what you're paying for the property, the positive is you're probably going to think, great, I've got a bargain, but the negative is you will pay the tax on the cadastral value as opposed to what you've paid for it. Quite important, that one, yeah? By the way, before I go from this bit, look at this street. This is how wide it is. This is the narrowest street in Priego de Cordoba. Keeps the sun off the houses, keeps them cool in the summer. Okay, number 7. Post-purchase. So once you're in your house and you're enjoying it, you probably just want to go and explore the area and everything, but try to get all of the boring paperwork out the way first. So changing your water, changing your electric, changing the council tax, make sure the owners have cancelled all this, and a good lawyer will do it all for you, and make sure that your tax is paid. The tax needs to be paid within 60 days of the purchase of the property. Last but not least, point 8 of my 8 stages is the mortgage. Now, if you do require a mortgage, a bank would generally want 30% deposit, and then they will do the valuation, which you would pay for, so there would be a cost for that valuation of it, and all of the necessary checks. Now, here's a point. If you are getting a mortgage, it's actually safer because the bank is going to do the checks for you, and you can be assured that the bank won't be lending the money if the property is not legal and all of the paperwork is in place. So a top tip would be, even if you don't need a mortgage, you could ask for a small one just to make sure that all of those checks are done. This might be the only time that you don't insist on using a lawyer, as long as you've got a good support network around you of the bank checking, the agent making sure that everything's in place. I don't rely 100% on the agent though, because remember there could be a conflict of interest as well, so be careful with that one. Also, a bank will be more likely to take you seriously if you've found the right property, and even more so if you've got the contrato de arras in place. But that is a bit of a chicken and egg situation. You're not going to commit to a contract and pay a deposit unless there was a clause in it to say that you could cancel it only based on the fact that if you didn't get a mortgage. But you're not going to want to lose the money if the bank turns you down, so you would need to know, you need to have a lot of confidence in advance to know that you're going to obtain a mortgage. Well, hope you learned something from that. Hope it's given you the confidence to purchase your dream property in Spain and start to live a wonderful lifestyle, drinking tinto de verano and eating a menu del dia, which I'm going to order soon. So remember to give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Pretty please. Speak soon.